Like, what are you talking about, women? Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Business Plays. I'm feeling super businessy today. I'm wearing a suit that a sponsor on one of my other channels sent me, Indochino. I like it, I feel businessy. Today, we are talking about history's most ridiculous airlines. And I think this all started because I said to Danny, who writes the scripts here on Business Plays, I said to Danny, I heard that you used to be able to there was an airline specifically for smokers. And this is the first one. I can see it here, the Smokers Express, which is a brilliant name. So we're gonna jump into this and I'm getting a phone call. I'm back. I'm recording this on a Friday afternoon. I'm going for beers after work today. Not wearing this suit. I gotta keep this suit nice for sponsors. Does anyone really enjoy the experience of flying? Well, Danny, that depends what class you fly. I mean, I get the idea. I just fly economy. I get the idea that you might be generally quite giddy about the thought of going on a holiday or finally arriving at an exciting new destination. But the actual experience of sitting there on a plane is usually about as thrilling as sitting on a packed bus, except that you can see a few clouds float by out of the tiny windows. You impatiently wait for the plane to land and keep your fingers crossed that you don't plummet 38,000 feet to your death. Well, a couple of things there, Danny. I think planes are like the safest way to travel. I do feel safer driving in a car, like driving myself, because there's airbags and stuff, and it's not certain doom if the plane falls out of the sky. But statistically, planes are very safe. Over the years, a few forward-thinking airlines have dreamt up innovative ways to spice up the experience, but the results are often quite bizarre, and many of them have really never gotten off the ground at all. That's what we're doing today, Smokers Express. This is what I've been waiting for. Bad news for smokers. The Federal Aviation Administration banned smoking on nearly all domestic flights way back in 1990. I'm not proud to admit this, but I'm a smoker myself. Oh, Danny, don't die on me. Not sure, I think Danny's quite young. He's probably alright. But the thought of taking a 10-hour flight from the UK to Abu Dhabi without being able to inhale a single puff doesn't exactly fill me with deep joy. Good news for smokers, though. A certain Florida-based company wasn't going to take the lying down. William Waltz and George Mickey Richardson were the defiant businessmen who were behind Smokers Express Airlines, who were ready to put up a strong fight against the in-flight smoking ban. They just needed a second to sit down and catch their breath first. The idea behind the airline was to create an in-flight environment in which smoking wasn't only allowed, it was positively encouraged, with flight attendants dishing out free cigarettes and full-sized ashtrays during the journey. I'm not a smoker, but I think I would fly on this just once to see what it was like a blast from the past, because, I don't know, I love that TV show Mad Men, and they're always smoking. And they're smoking on planes, and I'm like, this must be horrible. I'd do it for the nostalgia. So how did they get around the ban? Instead of setting up the company as a traditional airline, Smokers Express would charge a $25 membership fee, which would effectively make the airline a private travel club, free from the shackles of federal rules. The airline also promised real food, such as steak and hamburgers, free lotto tickets, because people who love steak and smoking must love gambling. And to quote their own marketing, no screaming, aisle racing, chair kicking children. Now that's something I could get behind. At one point, co-founder Richardson claimed he had already sold 6,000 memberships to his exclusive new club, but despite this initial interest, the venue just never received funding to take off. So that dream of 6,000 memberships are $25. So what, he raised 150 grand? That's not going to get you very far in the airline business. So the dream of flying and enjoying burgers while becoming increasingly engulfed in plumes of smoke ultimately just went up in flames. Fun fact, you know why they have those ashtrays in the bathroom? Even if you fly on a plane today, a relatively modern plane, there'll be an ashtray in the bathroom. Ever wonder why that is? It's because if someone smokes in the bathroom, illegally, they still need someone to put out their cigarette, because if they put it in the bin and the bin catches on fire, well, there's a plane crash, which is bad. So they include an ashtray, because just in case someone does decide to smoke illegally. Hooters Air, America's famous restaurant. Please God, don't tell me that's that actual advertising. Has already revolutionized the restaurant industry. Revolutionized. Oh yeah, Danny put it in air quotes. Revolutionized the restaurant industry by getting young women in skimpy outfits to serve up your hamburgers and chicken wings. Back in 2003, the company decided that it was time to take their genius business model into the skies with the launch of Hooters Air. There were no buffalo wings on the in-flight menu, but you could get soft pretzels and pigs in blankets, as well as the opportunity to stock up on Hooters-related merchandise. This sounds pretty to be honest. Okay, so there are going to be some scantily clad women and an opportunity to buy merch. Who's on an airline? It's sweet. merchandise. To be fair, the operation seemed to pull in passengers for this actually launched and worked for a few years, drumming up plenty of media coverage and flying to 15 different cities at its peak. However, the airline eventually made a landing down to Earth in 2006 with a reported loss of around $40 million. Brutal. Perhaps one of the biggest problems with the airline is that the service may not have matched customers' expectations. Yeah, where are the damn buffalo wings? Some passengers were expecting the flights to be packed with Hooters-style attendants. Well, yeah, isn't that the name of the game, Hooters? But in fact, there were only ever 2 Hooters girls on each flight. As they weren't qualified flight attendants, they weren't legally allowed to be involved in any of the important stuff like closing the plane doors, going through the safety procedures, or pushing the food carts. Instead, their role was largely limited to entertaining the guests with fun trivia games. That sounds terrible. Yeah, I would feel like that's a bit of a bait and switch. Also, Hooters, just train them as flight attendants. I don't want to take away from the job of a flight attendant. It's not like you're going to school for 6 years to learn how to do it, are you? It's no wonder that the whole venture eventually deflated into oblivion like a pair of balloons. KLM's meet and seat service. KLM's a good airline. I know KLM. A very quick mention must go not here to a ridiculous airline, but to a ridiculous airline service. Okie dokie. KLM Royal Dutch Airlines is actually the oldest airline in the world. I didn't even know that, with a history stretching back over a century. Do we have planes a century ago? Yeah, we definitely had planes a century ago. A century ago is like World War I. We're like fully fighting with planes. My history sometimes. And for an airline with such historic roots, it's refreshing to note that they're really ahead of their game with social media, boasting a strong presence on all the major platforms and keeping customers in the loop on news, events, marketing campaigns, and exclusive online promotions. This just sounds like really annoying the customers with spam when they accidentally signed up to your mailing letter and can't work out to unsubscribe. KLM recently became the very first airline to integrate social networking into its flight booking options with the launch of its meet and seat service. The name is a little misleading though. All it really boils down to is the option to visit the Facebook or LinkedIn profiles of other passengers on the same flight who've signed up for the same option. What? So the slightly creepy idea is that you could stalk the profiles of fellow passengers and find out where they'll be sitting on a plane so that you could pop over for a quick chat or share similar interests. This is such a terrible idea because when I'm on a plane, I just want to be left alone. I was on an 8-hour flight once and I was sat next to the chattiest woman in the world. And she was also a bit racist and old and weird. She was, I don't know, it got really uncomfortable really fast. And then I was like, oh yeah, sure, yeah. It's like, what are you talking about, women? Yeah, it's just generally uncomfortable. I just want to be left alone. Even when I'm traveling with friends and family, I don't want to talk because I'm always everyone else is quiet. And I'm just it's like when you're in a restaurant and you're sitting down and there's me and my wife having dinner or whatever, and there's just one person sitting on the table there, just eating alone. And it's even if they don't want to listen to our conversation, they're listening to the conversation. And I don't know, these days I've been involved in some pretty awkward moments, before I realized it, and now I'm much more guarded, but I'll be sitting in a pub or whatever, having a very candid conversation with my friend or my wife, and then the person who's been sitting next to us the last 2 hours will come over and be like, oh, hi Simon, I love your stuff. And I'll be like, oh God. So this is how the idea should work in principle. Unfortunately, nobody really seems to use it. So wait, he's talking about this in the present tense. So even if you choose the option when you're booking your own flight, it's unlikely you'll be able to view the other passengers' profiles. Can you imagine being the one guy who signed up for that? Just forever alone. The only customer review I've been able to dig up on the meet and seat concerns 2 guys who decided to hook up on the plane for a quick chat. Okay, I'm glad they weren't hooking up for something else. Mile High Club! After discovering that they shared similar hobbies. What are hobbies of losers? After just a few seconds, the flight attendants asked them both to return to their seats of their own accord because of the risk of conspiring on the flight. This is in quotes. Wait, what does that even mean? Can that actually happen? Okay, I found the review. It says, a Flyer Talk member, I used it with my LinkedIn profile without any effect except for once. I once met another FF Platt. I have no idea what that means. I assume this is people who fly regularly talk. But before we could get comfortable talking, we were sent back to our seats, otherwise we would be conspiring. Another one of those American viruses caught. I have no idea what that means. I don't understand how they could be conspiring. That's super weird. Although KLM is rightly considered to be a hugely successful and pioneering airline, it's maybe time for them to delete the meet and seat. How does this still exist? No one uses it, it's crazy, it's creepy, stop it KLM, don't be weird. Pet Airways. Why should your furry friends get shoved in the cargo while you get the comfiest recliner seat and the catering service? Controversial statement, I don't know, I'm a human and they're not. The idea for Pet Airways was cooked up. Oh my god, one of the most accidentally controversial things I've ever said was on Twitter, where I somehow said that dogs are less deserving than humans in some life way. And I'm I just didn't understand. People love dogs. Apparently that's a super controversial statement. Why is it so wrong that I value human lives higher than that of lower forms of life? And people are gonna have a go at me for calling animals lower forms of life. Guess what? They are. The idea for Pet Airways was cooked up by Dan Weissel and Alyssa? Is that how you spell Alyssa? Alysa. How about that, Alyssa Binder, while they were running into the usual headache of organizing a trip with their pet dog. Launched in 2009, Pet Airways became the world's first airline designed exclusively for the transportation of pets. I don't even want to say it. Passengers. Makes me feel ill. Flew in a pet-friendly main cabin rather than with the luggage. You checked in your four-leg friends at the special pet lounges in each airport, and you could later track their... This is the worst thing I've ever heard of. I like animals.
I'll try and do the same.
But this is absurd.
So I guess you have a choice. You want a war?
You could later track their progress on the journey via a live tracking website. The airline staff, who were human for legal reasons, would give all the pets a pre-boarding walk and pre-boarding bathroom trip before guiding the animals onto the plane, where they would be checked every 15 minutes by trained attendants. Whether this all sounds ridiculous or just deliciously sweet may depend on how much you love your animals. It's both at the same time. It's very, very cute, but it's also very, very ridiculous. It may also depend on your bank balance, as the fares for your dog could reach up to $1,200. You better be going to the bloody moon. I have to say I adored the idea, particularly as the airline had drawn up plans for a shelter pet relocation program which was intended to save the lives of homeless pets by flying them to cities where demand was higher for adoption. That's great. I'm all for flying shelter animals where they need to go. But the reality is, this is going to be a way more expensive way to fly them. So why not just fly them in the kennel, under, or whatever, the animal area of the plane, just put them in there, then you could do 10 times as many and save 10 times as many lives, right? Sadly, or not, Pet Airways closed just a couple of years later in 2011 after running into financial difficulties. However, the social media channels are still regularly updated and the website is actively seeking new customers. So, passengers could well be taking to the skies again in the near future. Bulkier Airlines. Finally, here is my top choice for the most ridiculous airline of all time. Bulkier Airlines was founded by Igor Dmitrievsky in 1989 as an American publicly traded corporation who were on a mission to fly their passengers from New York City to the then Soviet Union. Nearly 30 years later, the company changed the name to US Global Airways. Is that an oxymoron? To be England Global, United States Global. It's country and the world. So what was ridiculous about them? Well, it wasn't anything to do with them flying pets or smokers or social media stalkers or Hooters girls. No, it's just the small matter of them having never managed to get a single flight off the ground in 30 years. The main sticking point has been the airline's struggle to get official certification from the Federal Aviation Administration. Balti did briefly get authorization to operate flights from New York City to St. Petersburg in 1996, but back then it had no capital to buy aircrafts or run flights. Kind of essential for running your business, guys. Why did you get a license before you got money? They didn't have any money, so their license was revoked. After over 10 years of hand-wringing and poor business decisions, the airline again received approval to fly from New York to St. Petersburg in 2007, and this time they had a bit more capital behind the business. They're going to be really disappointed when they realize, we wanted to fly people to the Soviet Union. That doesn't exist anymore. This time, though, they had some capital behind the business. Good. They blew quite a bit of the budget on a big, shiny Boeing 747-200, which used to belong to Pakistan National Airlines. The only slight problem is that the aircraft didn't come with any engines. They bought another Boeing 747-200 in 2011, this time with an engine, I hope more than one, and then they went to the trouble of giving it a fresh lick of paint. But both aircraft were just left hanging around to rot and were ultimately sent to the scrapyard for a reported loss of $1.6 million. If you only lost $1.6 million, that was an incredibly cheap plane. Because I know those Boeing 747s are not cheap. Following Dmitrovsky's death, the company rebranded itself as US Global Airways in 2017. But despite taking nearly 30 years to get it right, the company has still managed to fail the most recent certification tests. Well, yeah, do they have any planes? If you're hoping to take a flight with US Global Airways in the near future, then stick around for a while. The company's efforts are still ongoing, but just give up. It's been 30 years. The country you wanted to fly to doesn't exist anymore. But with no planes to fly at the moment and a track record of failing certifications 7 times. Well, yeah, the guy shows up. Where are the planes? No planes. You fail. It'd be probably quicker for you to make the journey on foot. Yeah, 30 years. I could walk around the world in 30 years, no doubt. This has been Business Blaze, brought to you, not brought to you, but I feel businessy in my suit. Business Blaze suggestions below. Thank you for watching. Thumbs up, subscribe, all that stuff.